Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand. Thanks so much for joining us today.
We're all about reflecting the timeless truth of the Bible through the lens of today's world, making it relatable, understandable, and alive for your everyday life.
We're excited to dive into today's verses with fresh insights. Let's jump right in.
It is the ultimate awkward family Thanksgiving moment. You have the most powerful man in the world, Joseph, orchestrating this perfect ceremony for his sons. He's got the seating chart, he's got the birth certificates, he has lined everyone up according to protocol. And then his dying, blind father reaches out and ruins the whole thing.
He literally goes, "Nope, I'm doing it my way."
Exactly. He crosses his arms. It's the original crisscross applesauce of blessing. But it wasn't an accident. It was the last act of rebellion, or maybe the last act of faith, from a man who spent his whole life wrestling with God. Welcome back, everybody, to Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand. I'm your host, John Dalton.
And I'm Stephanie Dalton, and you guys, we made it. We are literally at the finish line of the very first book of the Bible, Day 18, the end of Genesis.
It is huge. If you are listening to this on your commute or at the gym, just give yourself a little mental high five. Most people quit by Leviticus, but a lot of people don't even finish Genesis because it gets so dense. But we are here, chapters 47 through 50.
I have to say, I'm actually a little sad. I feel like we've lived with this family, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, for almost 3 weeks now. We've seen their dysfunction, their faith, their lying, their redeeming moments. It feels like saying goodbye to neighbors we've been spying on.
Neighbors we've been spying on? That is alarmingly accurate. But don't worry, Steph, because the sequel is coming tomorrow, and let me tell you, Exodus is an action movie. Genesis is a family drama. Exodus is a blockbuster.
Okay, I'm ready for it. But before we leave Egypt, we have to deal with the death of the last patriarch. Jacob is dying.
Right. So let's set the scene. Genesis 47 ends with Jacob, who is now 147 years old, making Joseph swear an oath. And this is critical context. He says, "Do not bury me in Egypt."
Which is interesting, right? Because Egypt is where the food is. Egypt is where his son is the prime minister. Egypt is safe. Why is he so adamant about being dragged back to Canaan?
Because Egypt isn't home. It's a waiting room. Jacob knows the promise God gave his grandfather Abraham. To your offspring, I will give this land. And this land wasn't the Nile Delta. It was Canaan. By asking to be buried there, Jacob is basically staking a claim. He's saying, I might die here, but my story belongs over there.
I love that. It's like he's leaving a breadcrumb trail for his kids so they don't get too comfortable.
Exactly. But the real drama happens in chapter 48. This is the crossed hands incident we teased in the intro. So Joseph hears his dad is fading fast. He grabs his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, remember the order. Manasseh is the older brother, the firstborn. Ephraim is the younger one.
And in this culture, the firstborn is everything. We've talked about this. The firstborn gets the double portion, the leadership, the authority. It's the rule.
It is the rule. It's the law of the land. So Joseph brings them to Jacob's bedside. Imagine the scene. Jacob is sitting up on the bed, maybe propped up by pillows, eyes milky with age. He can barely see. Joseph positions Manasseh on Jacob's right side for the right-hand blessing, and Ephraim on the left. He is literally steering his father's hands.
He's trying to manage the blessing, which is so Joseph, isn't it? He's an administrator. He likes order.
Oh, absolutely. Joseph is the guy who color codes his Google Calendar. He sets it up perfectly. And then Jacob stretches out his hands and he crosses them. He puts his right hand on the younger son, Ephraim, and his left hand on the older son, Manasseh.
And Joseph freaks out. The text actually says it displeased him. He tries to physically move his dad's hand like, "Dad, you're confused. This is the wrong kid."
Dad, the Wi-Fi is bad in here. You're buffering. This is the wrong one. But Jacob refuses. He says, I know, my son. I know.
I know. That gives me chills. Why did he do it, John?
This is the modern mirror moment. Think about it like a royal succession. Imagine if the King of England decided on his deathbed, you know what? I'm skipping the Prince of Wales and I'm giving the crown to the younger brother. It breaks every protocol. It shatters the societal norms.
but it's not just random rebellion, is it? It feels like a pattern.
Bingo. Look at the history of this book. God chose Abel over Cain. He chose Isaac over Ishmael. He chose Jacob over Esau. He chose Joseph over the 10 older brothers. And now, Ephraim over Manasseh.
So, what is the Bible trying to tell us? Why does God always skip the right choice?
Because grace isn't inherited. That's the point. The world operates on primogeniture, the idea that you deserve power because of who you were born to or when you were born. God operates on election. I choose who I choose, not because they are the strongest or the oldest, but because I want to use them.
That's so comforting, actually, because if it was based on being the firstborn or the perfect one, most of us would be disqualified.
Exactly. It's the gospel in the Old Testament. God doesn't look at your resume. He looks at his purpose. And there's one more hidden gem in chapter 48 that I don't want us to miss. In verse 15, when Jacob is blessing them, he calls God something unique. He says, "The God who has been my shepherd all my life long."
Wait, really? Shepherd?
It is the very first time in Scripture that God is called a shepherd. Ra.
Wow. And that's coming from Jacob, the guy who was a shepherd himself, who was a trickster, who wrestled with God. At the end of his life, he doesn't call God a judge or a warrior. He calls him a shepherd.
Because a shepherd guides sheep who are prone to wandering off. And if anyone wandered off, it was Jacob. He's looking back at 147 years of mistakes and detours and realizing he was hurting me the whole time. Even when I ran away, he was hurting me.
That is beautiful. It's like he finally stopped wrestling and just let himself be led.
But speaking of wrestling, we aren't done with the drama yet, because after the crossed hands, Jacob has to address his own 12 sons. And let me tell you, some of these blessings in chapter 49, they sound a lot more like roasts.
Oh, I read that part. It's brutal. He basically tells Reuben, "You're unstable as water." Thanks, Dad.
Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence. Ouch. But there is one specific prophecy in chapter 49 that changes the course of history, the word given to Judah. And it connects directly to that lion imagery we see later in the New Testament.
And then we have the ending, the final scene with Joseph and his brothers, and that famous line, "You meant it for evil."
But God meant it for good. We're going to unpack that and talk about how to reframe your own past trauma right after this quick break. And we are back.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about Jacob's deathbed roast. I mean, his blessings for his 12 sons. And honestly, John, some of these are hard to read. He looks at Simeon and Levi and basically says, "You guys are violent and angry, and I want nothing to do with your assembly."
Yeah, he doesn't hold back. He remembers everything. He remembers the massacre at Shechem. He remembers the instability. It's a reminder that actions have consequences that echo for decades. You don't just get away with it because time passed.
But then he gets to Judah, and this is the one that really matters for the big picture, right? Because we know Jesus comes from the line of Judah, but why Judah?
That is the million-dollar question. Why Judah? Let's look at his resume. He's the one who came up with the idea to sell Joseph into slavery for profit. He's the one who slept with his daughter-in-law, Tamar, thinking she was a prostitute. He is a deeply flawed man.
If I'm God and I'm picking the lineage of the Messiah, I'm picking Joseph. He's the good one. He's the moral one.
Exactly. Joseph is the moral hero. But Judah is the repentant one. Remember a few days ago when they were in Egypt, who offered to trade his life for Benjamin's?
It was Judah. He stepped up.
That's the moment everything changed. And so Jacob looks at Judah in Genesis 49, verse 9, and calls him a lion's cub. And then he drops this massive prophecy in verse 10. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples."
The scepter. That's king language?
It is. Jacob is predicting that the kings of Israel, David, Solomon, will come from this messy, broken, redeemed brother. And ultimately, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus himself. It's another example of God using the unexpected candidate.
It's almost like the Bible is going out of its way to tell us, hey, you don't have to be perfect to be part of the plan. You just have to be willing to be changed.
100%. But speaking of being changed, We have to get to the finale. Chapter 50. The funeral is over. Jacob is buried. The family travels back to Egypt. And suddenly, the mood shifts.
Yeah, the text says the brothers start whispering to each other. They say, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him."
They are terrified. They think, okay, the only reason Joseph didn't kill us before was out of respect for Dad. Now that the old man is gone, the gloves are coming off.
Which is so sad. Joseph has been feeding them for 17 years. He's held their kids. He's wept over them. And they still don't trust his heart. They are still living in the guilt of what they did 40 years ago.
Guilt is a powerful prison, Steph. It blinds you to grace. You can be swimming in an ocean of grace and still feel like you're drowning in judgment because you can't forgive yourself. So, they do something desperate. They send a messenger to Joseph with a fake note.
It's the "my dog ate my homework" of the ancient world. They claim, "Oh, hey, Joseph, before Dad died, he totally said you have to forgive us. He wrote it down somewhere. Just trust us."
He left a voice memo, I swear. And Joseph's reaction breaks me every time. He doesn't get angry. He weeps.
Because he realizes they still don't get it. They think his love is a transaction. If we behave, he won't kill us.
And that leads to the verse. Genesis 50, verse 20. If you have a highlighter, this is the moment you uncap it. Joseph says, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today."
You meant it for evil. God meant it for good.
We need to camp here, because this is the modern mirror for today. This is the plot twist principle.
Ooh, I like that. Break it down for us.
Okay, think about your favorite movie thriller. Let's say The Dark Knight or Star Wars. The villain is always setting traps. The Joker sets a trap to destroy Batman. The Empire sets a trap to crush the rebellion.
Right. And as the audience, when the trap snaps shut, you feel that pit in your stomach. You think, "Oh no, it's over. The bad guy won."
Exactly. But a master screenwriter, a Christopher Nolan or a George Lucas, doesn't let the villain win. They don't erase the trap either. They use the trap. The very thing the villain designed to destroy the hero becomes the mechanism for the hero's victory. The trap inadvertently forces the hero to evolve, or reveals a secret weapon, or positions them exactly where they need to be to win.
So the villain is actually helping without realizing it?
Yes, that is the theological deep dive here. Joseph isn't saying, "Oh, it wasn't a big deal, guys." He says, "You meant evil." He acknowledges the sin. It was a pit. It was slavery. It was prison. It was evil.
He's not gaslighting himself. He's not engaging in toxic positivity.
No, he's a realist. You meant to destroy me. But God hijacked your plan. God took the raw materials of your malice, the pit, the slavery, the false accusation, and he re-architected them into a survival plan for the entire world. If Joseph doesn't go to the pit, he doesn't get to Potiphar's. If he doesn't get to Potiphar's, he doesn't go to prison. If he doesn't go to prison, he doesn't meet the cupbearer. If he doesn't meet the cupbearer, he never interprets Pharaoh's dream. And if he doesn't interpret the dream, everyone starves to death.
Wow. So the pit wasn't a detour. The pit was the transportation.
It was the transportation. And that's the takeaway for anyone listening right now who feels like they are in a chapter 39 or a chapter 40 moment. Maybe you lost the job. Maybe the relationship imploded. Maybe you're sick and it feels like evil. And maybe it is evil. Maybe someone did something to you that was wrong.
And you're sitting there thinking, how could God let this happen?
Joseph's life tells us that God is the master screenwriter. He doesn't stop the villains from writing their scenes, but he edits the ending. He takes the plot twist that was supposed to kill you, and he turns it into the thing that saves you or saves others through you.
That's heavy, John, because it requires so much trust. Joseph had to wait roughly 22 years to see the good. For 22 years, it just looked like tragedy.
It did, and that's why faith is hard. We judge the movie by the middle of the second act. God knows the final credit scene.
You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. It's the ultimate reframe. It changes you from a victim into a participant in a larger story.
Exactly. You aren't just a victim of bad luck. You are a participant in a redemption arc. But, and here's the kicker, Steph, Even after all this beautiful theology, even after the reconciliation, the book of Genesis ends in a really weird way.
It does. It doesn't end with and they lived happily ever after in the promised land.
No, it ends with a coffin, a box, in the wrong country.
A coffin in Egypt.
And that coffin is actually the most hopeful thing in the entire book.
Wait, a coffin is hopeful? You have to explain that.
I will, because that box is the bridge to the book of Exodus. It's the cliffhanger that keeps the promise alive. We're going to open that box, metaphorically speaking, and wrap up the book of Genesis right after this. And we are back for our final segment of Genesis.
It feels huge, John. We are staring at the very last verse of the very first book of the Bible. But before we close the book, we have to talk about that coffin.
The coffin in Egypt. It is one of the most unique endings in literature. Usually, you end a biography with the death, the funeral, and maybe a nice eulogy about how they are at peace. But Genesis 50 ends with a command.
Right. Joseph is dying. He is 110 years old, which, by the way, was considered the ideal lifespan in Egyptian culture. He's lived a full, successful life. He's the prime minister. But on his deathbed, he makes his brothers swear an oath.
He says in verse 25, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here.
Carry my bones. That is so specific. He doesn't say, build me a monument. He doesn't say, write a book about me. He says, take my skeleton with you when you leave.
Why? Because Joseph knows something. He knows Egypt isn't the destination. He knows that eventually this season of plenty is going to turn. He knows about the prophecy given to Abraham that his descendants would be enslaved for 400 years, but then they would come out with great possessions.
So by asking them to take his bones, he's basically betting on God's future promise over his present reality.
Exactly. Imagine it this way. It's like keeping your suitcase packed by the door for 400 years.
That is a long time to leave a bag in the hallway.
It is. But every time the Israelites looked at Joseph's coffin, and remember, they kept it for centuries, it wasn't just a box of bones, it was a billboard. It was a silent sermon saying, we aren't staying here, we are going home.
I love that. It turns a symbol of death into a symbol of hope. It's like he's saying, my body is dead, but the promise is alive.
And that brings us to the very last phrase of verse 26. And he was put in a coffin in Egypt.
In Egypt.
The book of Genesis began in a garden, and it ends in a coffin.
Oof. That sounds depressing when you put it that way.
It sounds depressing if you stop reading there. If Genesis was the only book, it would be a tragedy. It would be the story of humanity losing paradise and ending up in a box in a pagan land. But
it's not the only book.
no, the coffin in Egypt isn't a period. It's a comma. It's a cliffhanger. It creates a tension. The reader is left thinking, wait, they can't stay there. Who is going to get them out? Who is going to carry the bones?
It creates a hunger for a savior, a deliverer.
Exactly. It sets the stage perfectly for the book of Exodus. We need a Moses. We need a burning bush. We need the Red Sea. The coffin is the visual representation of our need for God to intervene one more time.
And that is where we leave it today, with the bones of Joseph waiting for the Exodus.
And you know what, Steph? That is a great picture of the Christian life. We are all kind of coffins in Egypt, in a way. We are here. We live our lives. We have jobs and families. But we know this isn't the final destination. We are waiting for the ultimate visitation to take us home.
This world is not my home. I'm just passing through.
Amen. And speaking of passing through, we have passed through all 50 chapters of Genesis.
We did it! Day 18 is in the books.
I am so proud of everyone listening. You just digested the foundational history of the faith: creation, fall, flood, Babel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the generations. You have the context now.
And tomorrow?
Tomorrow, the volume gets turned up to 11. We start the book of Exodus. We are going to meet the most famous character in the Old Testament, Moses. We're going to see plagues, parting seas, and the mountain of God.
I cannot wait. But for today, what is our one big takeaway? If we could text this summary to a friend?
I think it has to be the plot twist principle from Joseph. Here is the text. Your setbacks might be setups. What the enemy means for evil, God can re-edit for good. Trust the screenwriter.
I love that. Trust the screenwriter.
Thank you guys so much for diving deep with us today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because you do not want to miss day 1 of Exodus tomorrow.
Go subscribe, and we will see you then.
I'm John.
I'm Stephanie.
And this is Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand.
That's a wrap on today's podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us and diving deep with us.
We truly value your time and love walking through these chapters together. Your support means the world.
If you've enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a day. Drop a comment below. We'd absolutely love to hear how Modern Mirrors is opening your eyes to the text in fresh ways.
Join us tomorrow for another inspiring journey into the Word of the Lord. Until then, God bless you abundantly.